What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Coffee Q&A, your daily dose Coffee Q&A. We're talking about cold brew today. Yesterday, as you see here, we made our cold brew tower, and the cold brew is finished. So we'll get into that. And we've also, Peter Lee was like, hey, why don't you also do some immersion brewing? So we did some of that. We're gonna taste that, and then we're also gonna taste coffee that we brewed yesterday and just left sitting out overnight, right? Because these are different ways that you might be able to make cold brew at home. This would be a little bit ridiculous. Now there is a link in the description down below for this brew tower, as well as a smaller version. There is a smaller version that's less big. That's going to be a little bit nicer to use at home. So how's it going? What's going on? How you all doing today? We're going to be making this coffee. So first of all, this is relatively easy to work with because it's just done. The one that we're doing this full immersion with that we made in the French press, this is going to be the one that's a little bit more difficult to work with. As you can see, if I turn this light on, there's pretty good clarity. Look at that. All of the coffee has settled. So none of it is disturbed. If there was a way for us to extract this coffee out of here, it would be great. Problem is, there's no way to do that unless we thought about it beforehand. But if I look closely, I can see there's coffee floating at the bottom. There's coffee floating at the top. There's coffee at the bottom. And, in between, now that I'm moving it, some of the particulates are starting to precipitate out of the top. But it's relatively clear. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to filter that. And here's one of the problems. If you take coffee and you pour it into a paper filter, like most people would, it works well for the first few ounces. But eventually it clogs because all the small particulates start to clog between the fibers of the paper. Why that doesn't happen to this extent, and it stalls everything, but why this doesn't happen to this extent when you're brewing coffee is because now you've got a complete aggregate of different size particulates in your coffee bed. So while there are minor, really, really small, fine particulates that clog the filter, a lot of that's getting suspended within the matrix of all the larger coffee grounds. So that reduces the amount of clogging that's going to happen to your filter. But when you're pouring it straight like this, so like if I was to plunge this and then separate and then pour it in, it will stall fairly quickly. Naomi, good morning to you. And Kent, how are you doing? So we're going to take this is let me put this, it's kind of trying to find that balance of like framing is difficult. So we're going to put that on here and we're going to, how should we do this? I'm going to, okay, how I've done this in the past. So there's a couple of, now, I have not really left something like this sitting for this long to see the level of clarity here. Like I really wish there's a way to, if I had a pump, I was going to see, I could take a straw and, well, what if I could take a straw? Here's an old BK straw from decades ago. It's just been sitting here. We're going to open it up. And I'm wondering, plastic, you see how old it is, plastic. We don't do plastic in America anymore, right? Or at least where I live. So let's take this off here and see what happens if we can get it to somehow, I'm going to be gentle. Oh, there's a little bit of, things are precipitating out. Let me try this, see if I can show it to you. You can see there's precipitation happening, right? Look at that. I'm going to try to pull this out to see if we can get very little precipitation. Oh no, it's really, look at that. The tension is breaking. Look at this, man. This is compelling stuff, man. Look at that. Okay, there's no way to do this. There's no way to do this. Oh yeah, look at that. See, I'm going to try to get as much to stay onto this mesh as I possibly can. Man, this is like epic movie making here, coffee movie making. Now there is some amount that's staying with it. Look at that. There's some amount that's staying with it. We're gonna try to get rid of that. I'm just gonna put that aside over here. Good. And as you can see, there is this, there is now scum. All right, so here's what I've experienced in the past. Okay, so in the past, when I've tried to do this kind of thing, and I poured it straight from the from this brewer into this filter, it clogs. Where I have found better results is if I mix it, so all the aggregate comes together into the filter. That tends to make the filter last the longest. There's still a lot of like minor particulates that get clogged in the filter because I guess there's greater exposure and it's not totally like settled in the mix. Mom, good morning to you. So we're going to do this and see what we can see. And I've also tried scooping like some of the residue. I'm just going to stir it to try to like suspend it. Okay, there we go. That's something. Okay, you can see it's flowing pretty well. And we get, the nice thing about using a filter is now we're getting good clarity for the brew, which is, I think, important for flavor. And our yield is not too bad. We put 350 milliliters of water. We're getting about 300 out of it, which I believe is, I never really checked it. Hey, Siri, how many ounces is 300 milliliters?
300 milliliters is 10.14 fluid ounces.
Oh, I guess we're a little bit short. All right, so that's all right. There we are. Now, 300, see, actually looks right there, 300 bills. That's pretty good. So there it is. We've got our one brew. That's done. That's nice. And let's look at our. So as you can see, there was. I remember yesterday we set this to the coarsest possible setting on that Ode Gen 2. That looks like a lot of very fine. Let's dig in and see here. It's coarser, but I would not describe this as like, to me, French press coarse would be coarser than this. So when I reassembled that grinder, it still kind of had issues. That grinder is just all about the issues. All right, now we've got this ready. Okay, so that's ready to drink. I'm going to get rid of that so that it's out of our way. Put this aside. Now, the thing is, we've got our big tower brew. And I checked on it throughout the day yesterday, and, the flow went pretty well. But here's something that we'll try. And one of the things that I wanted to, when we're doing this in a professional environment, this middle section here is relatively large. Now, if you look at the links in the description down below, or if you check out the Substack post from yesterday, I have some photos of the OG brewer. Now, here's something that I wanted to say to mention. Yesterday, I was talking about the OG brewer, and I'm relating a story where I went to Blue Bottle in Brooklyn. Turns out that was like 2011. I found the pictures from that thing, and while the brandy was still delicious and the espresso was one of the worst I'd ever had, I said in yesterday's stream that the OGs they didn't set them up and they weren't operating correctly. I was looking very closely at the pictures yesterday as before I posted them to the Substack. I was incorrect. Now in my advanced stage of experience and expertise, I realized that whatever I had thought I saw or remember seeing was completely inaccurate. I totally had a misrepresentation. Those OG brewers, the four of them or the five of them that they had set up at Blue Bottle Brooklyn, were correctly set up and were in operation. So that's on me. Now, if you look at those OG brewers, right? So there's the OG brewer has this big orb that holds all the water, much like this one does. Where they tend to really differ is that the water in the OGs are separated into two separate chambers like this. So this one chamber is fairly wide. The chamber for the two OGs is pretty narrow. There's a distinct advantage to that versus this, and I'm going to show you. So here's the thing. If we look, here is our brewer. Now, like I said yesterday, this is where the water starts. We use the valve to control the flow of the water, and it drips into this chamber. Now, this chamber is, it'll hold a pound, 500 grams of coffee easily. But in order for you to have that much coffee, it's a fairly big chamber, right? It's fairly big. Now, let's compare that to our valve. Our valve is just a valve. It's a small valve, but look at the diameter of this chamber. It's fairly wide. Part of the reason we're using this paper filter is so that we can help dispersion. Now, one of the reasons, and I forgot to mention yesterday, and I didn't remember until I was in the middle of brewing yesterday, and then I didn't bother to make a change. So what I'm talking about here is that one of the problems by having such a big spread of coffee for this little tiny drip is that it concentrates that flow of water into a relatively small area. Part of the reason we're using the filter is to help disperse that. And then another thing strategy we'll do is that as we check the flow rate throughout the day, we'll also look at the coffee bed and make adjustments to how we position the chamber. And what I mean by that is that, not that one, is that, for example, let's say I'm looking at this here and I want to see you can see here there's dryness, right? There's a little bit dry. This is all wet. And why is it wet under the dry? Who knows? It's just how it is. What we will do is throughout the days, we're going to be looking at this and we're going to be turning it and adjusting it. Sometimes we may even, because it's chamfered, right? There's a chamfer here that seats the lip of the chamber. So it doesn't really, so sometimes we may want to move it like to the edge and then just kind of rotate it. And I mean, I'm rotating it fairly quickly, but really I'm not rotating it this fast, of course. This is happening over hours, right? To try to get even extraction over the coffee bed. And then, of course, you can only go so far before, your stem starts to, I can only go that far. Otherwise, I'm getting out of position for both the stem and the valve. And then another thing we talked about yesterday was this spiral, which I guess aerates it or does something or just looks pretty. I'm not sure. But you can see here there's still coffee residue or coffee in the tubes. If you don't clean this right away and clean it often, you'll get buildup, and that buildup will become rancid and ruin the flavor of your coffee, like we experienced with that place in Honolulu. So these are some of the things that you want to, if you do the tower brewing, whether you're doing this if you want to buy this for your home, I most certainly encourage you to do that. But you can buy the smaller one, or if you work as a professional and you're working with these, these are some things that I think will be helpful to making better quality cold brew with these kind of towers. Naomi says in one of the videos I watched yesterday, the guy flowed water into the bed of coffee, stirred it until it's all saturated, then smoothed it out and let it drip. That is a strategy that people can use to help prevent what we're talking about here. And let's actually get into this a little bit more because I think it's kind of an interesting aspect of brewing coffee. So let's look here at our bed, right? We've got our filter. Now, typically, I normally make bigger filters, but now let's remove this. I noticed this happening throughout the brew. I did not change it because I figured let me use this as an opportunity to illustrate this point, right? And oh no, my battery's dead. Okay. You can see here that we have a lot of, it's fully saturated in the center, but there is a ring that runs around it that is dry. Now you can see up here in the 12 o'clock position, there is a little bit of wetness. Now that is because at one point I started to saturate it to compensate for that, but then I decided that, it's better for illustration for this live stream to not do that so that you can see what happens. So let us go a little bit further and see, I'm not quite prepared as I thought I was. Let me get my cup here and we're gonna get our spoon and we're gonna dig out and see if I can mess with this a little bit. Okay, that's a little bit better. Now we got that was the frame rate. That was a bad choice. So you'll notice now that it's kind of janky looking. The shutter rate I changed the shutter rate, not the aperture. Anyway, you can see here it's relatively dry around the edge. Power plant says it is better to get the bed saturated like that video. And yeah, because this part that's dry means that there is no extraction happening. So you're not getting the full experience of that. Now, if we look on the side here, you can see that most of it is extracted. So really the part that's not getting extracted is just this little rim. But let's dig down a little bit into it just to make sure. Okay, that's fairly wet. Now, this finished hours ago. So it's fairly dry comparatively to like a fresh brewed coffee. But as you can see, we're getting down and it is still wet or had been wet. Once were wet. But now let's go on the side here. You can see that, yeah, and actually it looks like what we're seeing here is there is the dryness really is what we can see on the edges. So it's right on the side, but not on the inside and not below it. There's a line that stops. So let's see if there's a little bit right there. Let's dig down a little bit more. Yeah, so if I take that out, you can see the line there where it ends. So it's really just that very top layer that's not getting saturation. Like here's another piece that's on the edge. And then everything below that is very wet. Let's see there, like this piece here. It's kind of interesting to see that. Actually, maybe I want to use this for today's Substack. Okay, so, but outside of that, we're finding that it's all very saturated, right? If we dig down there, you can see the saturation is still, whoops. Now I know it looks like on camera that looks dried up, but it's actually has been wet. It all has been wet down there. Let's go over this side and dig down into here. Yeah. So here we've got, so the problem prone areas is really just that upper part. So, as far as a percentage of what we're missing in the extraction amount is fairly small, but it's still missing. So you're not getting everything that you wanted. Again, you want to make sure that you clean these out well. I tend to just run water through them, and I want to do that as soon as I possibly can, just so that I can keep the drying coffee to a minimum. And then at some point, like you can see here, this is kind of one of the problem areas for this. You can see there's a little discoloration right there, right? A little bit discoloration right here at the bend. And that is buildup of coffee oil. So you're going to want to make sure that that gets clean. What I eventually will do will be to create a bath of OxyClean and then pour it into this and then just sit it in the bath. And then that should be enough to take care of it. And then sometimes I'll blow through it. But I would only do that in a home environment where I'm the one drinking it. So you can do that. You don't necessarily have to do that. Then cleanup otherwise is fairly simple for this. Now, the one thing that you got to be careful of is don't lose the ceramic filter down here. It's still in there and it's loose. We have lost many of filter this way, right? But basically you take it by your trash can and you just kind of, shake it out. Look for the filter. I would be doing this much more aggressively and lower inside the bin of the, and maybe use a spoon to dig it out. Not that the filters are very expensive, but you just don't want to lose them. Oh man, I'm making a hella mess. Oh, there it goes. And then you recover it. Oh yeah, gosh. Coffee is a messy pursuit. This is why I never made coffee at home in most of my career, because it's always so I tend to be messy in my work. So I prefer not to make coffee at home so that I can avoid having too much mess. All right, let's put this over here. Let me just wash off my hand. Okay, let's do some housekeeping. All right, now it's time to, so we've got, everything's ready. Otherwise, everything's ready. We've got our 33,000 milliliters or plus of coffee here. You can see that. Look at that, like, I don't know, 3,300 milliliters, just under a pound. Now, if you really wanted to get more yield out of it, you could put the pound in it, right? You could fill it up to 3.8 liters and get the full gallon. You can do that if you want, because we ratioed the finished brew to be that strength. But today we're not going to worry about that. Propline says the full immersion toddy style brewing is better for cold brew for you. Good. And then maybe if you choose to bypass the coffee, the Kyoto style better towers are better for you. I guess gravity beats osmosis. The cold brew I make with my giant soup bags and glass pitcher tastes like chocolate fudge and coffee. Oh, nice. That's a big factor. That's going to be the coffee that you use. And since you use that UCC, that doesn't surprise me. And Naomi cannot get the UCC coffee in northern Alabama. Really, they don't have Asian markets there? Come on now, Bama. You can't use Kafiza bath. I find oxy leaves. I don't find that oxy leaves soapy residue. But one of the things that with any kind of cleaning solutions, make sure that you rinse it really well. In what a little research that I've been able to do on the subject, the big reason that we went to OxyClean was because I couldn't find material difference in ingredients used between the two products, right? Because when you look at Cafiza and what's the other one? Ernex, are they the same? Anyway, I mean, you look at their ingredients, and they've got this oxygen-based cleaning ingredient in it. And when you look at the MSDS for OxyClean, and I looked up the actual ingredients that were in it, and I was like, and then tried to read about them. And I'm not a scientist, so I don't know how well I understand it, but I could not find material difference between the active ingredients. So I was like, they're essentially the same thing, doing the same thing. And I have not had problems with residue on products that we've cleaned using the OxyClean. The important thing with OxyClean, though, is because it is a consumer-based product and comes in various forms, you probably don't want to use the lavender-scented OxyClean. Right? But, it's not like I think that I find OxyClean to work really, really well. And I think if you're interested in, cost-saving measures, that can be a viable solution. But, for most people at home, like if you can easily get Ernex or Cafiza, those are fantastic products on their own. They're not, but when you're going through it as we would do, like heavily, it's like, do I need to have all this rigmarole to order the product and bring it in when I can just go to Costco and buy a big box of it and we have it for a year, right? That's really kind of where it breaks down to. And it cost me $15 for the box versus however much for the case. Power Plant says, I made some Mexican-style beans with lard, oregano, and onions. When I started that sentence and Mexican beans, I'm thinking, you're roasting your own coffee now? And then lard, you're putting lard in your roast like the Malaysians? Okay. Oregano and onions. Then I was like, okay, that can't be coffee. Well, I guess it could. Not refried, just boiled. Can eat these beans with rice. Hold on. That's how you do it, man. You get the beans with the rice. I gotta say one thing about like Mexico that I do enjoy is like you go to Mexico and there's such a wide, varied patois of foods, right? Within the Mexican cuisine, it's all very wide and varied. And then I travel to other parts of like Central America, and my Central American friends, they're probably gonna hate me for this, but it's like I can only eat Central American breakfast so many times, like before it starts to get a little bit, okay, I'm a little bit tired now, right? Like the typical Central American breakfast is rice, beans, eggs, maybe some fried plantains, some cotija cheese, and some meat. But after a while, it's just always the same. It's like, man, are we ever going to have anything different here? Like after a week, I'm like, man. But in Mexico, you get like, man, I'm kind of like deranged. I like if I can have chilaquiles every morning, I'm going to have that. So chilaquiles one morning, then have torta de chilaquiles the next morning. So something along that line would be very pleased. Anton, good morning to you. All right, so let's do some taste. Now, I did keep yesterday's brew, and here's the interest about yesterday's brew that I was going to look up, but I didn't. We brewed this doing the pour over, right, in the bee house. It has turned cloudy over the last 24 hours. Right. In the time that we have made the other two, this has turned cloudy. I don't really understand that because I never make cold brew this way. So, but I think it's going to be an interesting exploration to see what is the big difference. So we've got our yesterday's brew, so a little bit cloudy, right? Let's look at that, a little bit cloudy. Then we have our press pot brew. Oh, that looks a little bit cloudy too, but not as cloudy, right? And then we have our big tower brew. Oh, it's just it's just so much deeper. And Yeah, there it is. We're going to taste them and see how much difference there are between the two. So let's start off first with our regular brew. Now, yesterday we had, I mentioned that in the beans, the fragrance had like nice like strawberry, cherry notes, some chocolate. In the flavor of the coffee when it was hot, it had actually surprisingly heavier bitter notes, or not heavier, but more forward bitter notes than I had expected from the fragrance. But let's see. So on the nose, much more chocolate. Ooh, that bitterness is still there. A little bit more dry, like tannic kind of dryness to the coffee. A little bit of pungency. Like I think that it has lost a step from yesterday in that respect. All right, let's do this one. We're going to use our fancy noritake for the press pot brew. This is probably more along the lines of how it would be more convenient if you want to try this style of brewing at home. Oh, that's interesting. Much more expressiveness, right? Where this is tight, some chocolate, the dark chocolate. This one, I'm getting some of that fruitiness, that natural processing on the nose, some of that strawberry, fragrance or aroma. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, not as bitter, lighter, a little bit sweeter, more dancing of the fruitiness on the palate. The finish is a bit dry, hints of tannic. Okay, interesting. Interesting. Let me grab another cup. This one is another. What is that? Is this noritake? I cannot see. I can't see anymore. Anyway, not that important. We've got our cup here. Little blue edge there. Now we're going to use this to taste our. Actually, let me step this back down. That's better. Okay, pour this. Oh, this thing is difficult to control. One of the things I don't like about this particular brewer is that this orb is not terribly easy to control for pouring, right? So it's a little bit cantankerous and unwieldy. Oh, look at this. This is an interesting thing to see. So let's look at these two cups together. To my eye, let me adjust the volume. Look at that. These are more or less similar in volume. This is significantly lighter in color. Huh, interesting. So there's a little bit of the fruities, like strawberry nose. However, it's much more intense in this cup. Huh. It's got this. This is weird. Okay, I'm wondering if there's something that may be going on here. I feel like the intensity is fairly low. There's even a sense of spiced leather, but definitely the body is thinner. So I'm wondering, could this be a layering effect, right? As the coffee brews, right, the heavy intensity of the brew is going to be when the chamber is full and you're getting full. And as it fills, but we talk about this with espresso, right? So that the layering changes. So I'm gently pulling from the very top. Now, in a commercial operation, we're actually transferring all of this into a separate container. So that transference from one container to another homogenizes the blend of the layers of the coffee. So let's presume that that is what's going on here, because this is very light. This is very almost like cascara kind of tea. Like it's interesting. It's curious. There's hints of this strawberry. There's hints of this natural process, but it's just hints. It's just kind of like very. Oh, I think I need another photo for the Substack. Now I'm going to take the spoon and we're going to. Anton says the coffee jugs looks like you could use it to breach the wall. And I guess that thing behind you must be the ram. The ram. This is the ram. You just turn it side and bludgeon your way through it. Oh, Anton wants to know what you prefer. I'm presuming you mean would you prefer this over more regular cold brew? I mean, to me, this is actually the regular cold brewing method. Like there was a period of time at Spro when this was the only type of cold brew we offered, right? There was just this style of brewing. Now, the coffee that we're using back then was very different than this coffee, right? This coffee is a very fruity, natural processed coffee. We used an anaerobic processed, milky, sweet, kind of heavier coffee with a little bit more of a roast profile on it. This is a fairly light roast. So, and that's another thing to bear in mind is that, in coffee, we like to speak in generalizations, that it's relatively, we try to make it simple so that people can have a simple understanding. But when you get down to it, there's so many different complexities to even something as simple as this. And it really starts with the coffee, the kind of coffee that you use, or the coffee that you select. And this is true whether you're just a consumer at home selecting coffees from all the roasters in the world, or you're a green buyer at a company buying coffees at origin with the intention of using them for this purpose. Everything needs, I mean, in order to make something that's compelling, it needs to be intentional. And that's kind of where that's where the difficulty lies, right? That's truly, to my mind, the battle of coffee and preparing quality coffee for people is the battle is really decided at the point that you decide to buy the coffee, right? That's really it. You bought a coffee, you select the coffee, and that is the minimum baseline that you have. You can only go up. You can certainly go down, but really you can only go up, and you can't you can't do better than that coffee, right? So if you buy a coffee, so if you break it down into like score wise, let's say you buy an 82 coffee. Oh no, that's even too nice. Let's say you buy you want to save money. So let's say you go for a lower differential, you get a 75-point coffee. It's going to have coffee notes. It's going to have coffee flavors, but you need to save money. So you make that. You can never make that into an 87 coffee or even an 83 coffee because it just doesn't have those guts. It doesn't have, it's kind of like you want to make chicken into steak. It just can't do it. So you must start with the steak, right? So you must buy the nice quality coffee in order to get something nice. Now, this particular coffee is from, that's another thing, another error from yesterday's live stream. I was saying to you yesterday that this coffee came from a company called Camel Step. And because we're using unmarked bags, I didn't really remember clearly. But as I was writing my Substack entry yesterday, I realized that, I don't think this came from Camel Step. It had to have come from Sulalat, which is another Saudi-based company, also excellent coffee roasters. And I remember I mentioned that they roasted on a loring. That must have been my subconscious saying that it was Sulalat because Sulalat's the only one that is the company that uses the lorings. Camel Step, I think they use They use a drum roaster. I think they use a Diedrich, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. But again, another error from yesterday's stream was the source and origin of the coffee. But let's do this stirring here. Anton says, good thing good thing you have such a long spoon. Yeah, that's what she says. That's what she says. So do I prefer this over more roll? I mean, I prefer, I'm open when it comes to brewing for cold brew. I'm open to other styles. Like this style of immersion is fine for me. The toddy style, which is very similar to this, is very fine for me. This is I just love this style. I'm okay with like pouring coffee, like the Kyoto style where you pour the coffee over ice. That's fine too. I mean, to me, it's like at the end of the day, for me, as a coffee person, the idea of coffee is not necessarily is the core of the coffee mission is different than, let's say, those of you at home, right? Meaning that my interest in coffee is to provide, hopefully, a delicious experience for you, right? It's not necessarily delicious. It doesn't necessarily have to be a delicious experience for me. Like that's not the goal, right? And we talk about in this here where coffee, in our context of making coffee for yourself, is pleasurable hedonism. It's all about your pleasure, all about what you enjoy, right? For me, it's about trying to provide something for you to enjoy, for others to enjoy. So the approach can be a little bit different. So as far as like what I like, I'm looking for something that's going to be delicious. And so if let's say it's for me, I don't really worry too much about the process that we're using as long as it tastes great, right? Like that's what I want. I'm not drinking a coffee to think, oh man, that's immersion brewing is great with the filter, using the paper filter from the Melita. That's really a great way to go. What I want is to have something and be like, whoa, that's awesome. Like that's what I look for. Like as a consumer, when I go out in the world, let's say donuts, right? I go to buy donuts. I want that donut to be awesome. Like I want to bite in that donut. I don't want to be like, that's great. Like just, you know what I'm saying? Like just be like, yeah, that's what I want, right? I don't care how they made it. I don't care what kind of oil they use, what kind of deep fryer, what temperature. I don't care what kind of flour they used or what yeast and how long they've raised the dough. I don't care about all that. All I care about is like, I want to go back and buy more. That's all I care about as a consumer. So for me, the process is not necessarily so important as the delivery. Right? I hope that makes sense, right? I hope that makes sense. Naomi says, maybe it needs a stir. I think so. We're going to try that in a moment. Anton says, man, I just finished my last sip of Hacienda Barbara La Huaca. Okay, these names so long. Hacienda Barbara La Huaca Geisha, wash lot, good Lord, for Lashwa 12, Lashwa 12. Oh no, Datura. Datura would be Datura or Datura? Oh, from Datura Coffee. Oh, Datura Coffee. Okay, Datura Coffee. Lot 12, lot 12. 12? Anyway, we're going to stir now and see if that improves our experience and try to homogenize our brew. Really, I should just transfer it into this container. Actually, that is what I'm going to do. We're going to transfer to this container to make sure that we get a little bit. I think that'll be a little bit more accurate for the homogenization of our brew. So let's pour it. Now, here's the interesting thing. There is a spout here, but that spout sucks. We just do it this way. I've never really drank it from this orb. Like we've always transferred it and used it that way. So this is actually the first time I've ever had this kind of experience. Okay, so let's look here. This is our, I'm gonna put that back in. And now we're we're going to try again. Oh, the Lohaka was good. Okay, excellent, excellent. Sorry that it's all gone. Oh, look at that. So different now, so different. There we are. This is definitely more in line. Actually, maybe I should. There is slightly more coffee by volume in this cup than this one. This is darker, right? So there we are. We can see here that we've got a darker flavor. Let me do another photo for the Substack. Be sure to subscribe. All right, let's see here. I was going to say that I feel like the tone, the aroma of that strawberry is missing, but I can't seem to smell it now there. I would say they're relatively similar, but for some reason, I just no longer can sense that. Maybe my palate, maybe my nose is used to it. Oh, that's totally different. That's totally different. Richer, more body, fuller, much more rounded, a little bit dry. Like it's not terribly sweet. Like the sweetness is kind of low and it's kind of this dry. But remember this, I think this one, maybe it's this one. Yeah. This one, the regular brew just left to sit outside has a much more tannic kind of finish, a lot of tannins. This one does not have the tannin. This has a very light amount of tannins. This has like no tanning. It's very clean, not dry, but just clean. And let's see. Juicy kind of finish. Actually, it's down. So much more body, much more development. Actually, that's really nice. Yeah, definitely some of that. And so the fruit, and I'm getting like a dark cherry, maybe a hint of strawberry, a little bit of dark chocolate, but like it's very rounded. The fruit quality is very rounded. It's very, and it's also, like I said, it's a darker cherry, not a brighter cherry. Now, this is still very good, right? And they're all good. This is good. This is very good. This is definitely better. Like there's definitely greater complexity. Oh yeah, greater complexity, greater body, greater depth of flavor. Just a much more deeper experience with this than this. And as far as mathematics goes, we're using the same ratios of coffee to water that we for both. This is 260 grams to 4,000 milliliters, where this is 24 grams to 350 milliliters. This one also the same, 24 to 350. So the ratios are fairly the same, but I do think this experience. Now, you know what, Anton, let me go back. I think this is the better way to go. It's been a while since I brewed this way. So it's been and this is definitely why we went to this first over the toddy. We started adding toddy years into it because our capacity to produce coffee in this manner started to get outstripped by the demand, especially in the summer times. Like we were running 6 towers. And 6 towers physically takes up a lot of space, and you're only getting if you're able to time everything correctly. And sometimes you just can't time it correctly because sometimes the flow rate changes, and you have issues with that. Sometimes it stalls, and if it stalls overnight, when nobody's there, there's no way to make that correction until somebody arrives and checks it the next morning. So you get a delay. So at the maximum, so it's 6 hours brewing at 12-hour brews, more or less, you can produce 12 gallons. We can produce 12 gallons of coffee a day, cold brew. When your demand starts to pass that, then it becomes much more difficult. So we started to augment it with toddy style brewing because I can make like what 4 or 5 gallons of cold brew concentrate from a toddy in the same amount of time it would take one of these. And the footprint, square foot wise, is the same, right? That 5 gallon bucket is about the same footprint as this. And if I really wanted to, we could stack them, like we never did, but you could stack them, right? Like you put a lid on it, stack it, and come back the next day, or come back in 12 hours. So there were some distinct advantages to go to do that. And but I this just reminds me that the reason we did start with these after we'd figured out, like, beyond the sexy part, was that I like the style of it more. Like this definitely produces a much just a deeper complexity, deeper, more interesting, more expression. Like if you could be sitting here now and trying this, I think you would all find that this is superior to this one. And this is more or less a toddy style brewing, right? But it's not like, this is also compared to a toddy system or just buying a French press and doing this way. This is wildly expensive, right, for home use. And this is godly overkill. Even the small one is. So here's the thing: like this is a gallon brewer. Right? You can brew up to a gallon at a time. It'll cost you $500, which is a lot of money. Unless you're making a lot of it, then it's probably worth their money. If you have a lot of people drinking cold brew in the summertime, it could be worth the time. Plus, it's cool. Your friends come over. They're like, "Whoa, dude, you're really kind of crazy." Like, yeah, exactly. That's why you come here, and that's why you're having my coffee. But then there's a small one that's like 32 ounces, which is much more manageable, right? It's probably the same. It's about the same production of coffee that this will do. For that is like $300, right? Now it's like $270, I think. Again, that's a big investment for a brewer that you're going to make 32 ounces out of. But that'll give you a way to do this style of brewing with a lesser cost than the big one. But the question is whether it's worth it or not. I don't know. Like you got to dedicate not just the counter space for it, but you've also got to dedicate. And now the other one's only about this tall, I think, somewhere right around here. But you also have to dedicate not only the counter space, but the height space, right? The height. This is huge. This is like 3.5 feet, over a meter. Yeah, it's not an easy thing to place. Like if you have a significant other that's not into coffee, or maybe they're even into coffee, but they're going to be like, "What are you doing putting that thing in my house?" Right? So these are things that you need to balance in your world before you can try that. Juicy is good. Juicy is good. Juicy is good. What about sweetness? So the sweetness, let's see. I mean, they both have sweetness, right? I know I said earlier that it didn't have, but now that I'm tasting more, there is sweetness developed. This has a drier expression. This doesn't have the dryness, right? This has the juiciness. This has the dry. I'm presuming that that's probably a factor of how long the water was in contact with the coffee itself, right? Like this is full immersion. So it's totally in contact the whole time, all 24 hours of it with the water, where this takes about 12 hours to brew, but it's in constant motion, right? Just like a pour over it. It just passes through, removes a little bit as it goes, and it's that continual pass through that removes all the flavor, which is a great reason why at the very end, the top layer was so light, was so like lacking in many things because there's not much left for it to remove. I thought that actually, now that I think, but that's actually really an interesting result of today. Like, oh, because I never had tasted it this way. We just normally transferred it and drank and served it. Anton says, I have noticed this expression of fruit qualities can be influenced very much with the choice of grinding birds. Oh, I get it. I get it. I believe it. I mean, I would imagine that the way that it slices the coffee maybe has a difference in the way that it exposes that coffee to the water, perhaps. I'm not sure. I wonder if there's anybody that's done any studies on that could say why, people have this perception of those kind of results, right? And not to say that, and I'm the other side of it is also like the question that I would also want is like, how much of the change that people are noticing is is partly due to how much they want that change to occur, right? And I'm not saying this is your case. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that because I don't know, but I'm just wondering. Like sometimes I wondered, like, do we find results to fit what we'd like to do, right? Like, let's say I bought this Gen 2 grinder, and I'm really, really in love with it. Might make much more excuses for that grinder, despite the flaws, because I want to like it, right? I want to like not have that. And this is where we are. And those of you who are not in the United States, and that is a strange corollary to how we find ourselves in our situation in the world today. I think we have a lot of people that have professed certain beliefs and feel that they must conform everything to those beliefs so that they cannot be wrong. So I think that is something I think that's part of the human condition that we have to try to fight. Right, like I was just reading this. There's a chef in like Kent will probably be familiar with this, but there's a chef in Copenhagen by the name of Rene Redzepi. He owns a restaurant group it's a restaurant group that's headed by a restaurant called Noma, very famous. If you're in the culinary world, Rene is a very, very famous chef. I've been to a couple of his restaurants, not to Noma, but I've been to a couple of restaurants in Copenhagen, hung out with some of his staff. And yesterday or today, Rene decided to step away from his company because evidently it's come out that he's been a very toxic and very like harsh kind of leader, very old school brigade style. Like in the old school of like cooking in the brigade system, it's a very harsh environment. People are, cursing, hating, throwing stuff, knives, chairs, whatever. It's really a tough condition. And I'm from the 80s. So my whole world is kind of like, people of my generation are used to the kind of thing. Newer generations are not. Like it's a much more benevolent world now than it used to be. And I was reading he had a post today. I just saw it this morning where he was talking about leaving and stepping aside, making way for for all of his transgression. He posted about this on his Instagram a week ago or so, where he was like, "I'm really sorry," and I thought the way that he handled it then was respectable because he wasn't like, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry if you feel bad." He was like, "I'm sorry, I was wrong." He didn't give too many excuses for why he did. And someone like myself who comes from that kind of age, I get it where he's coming from. Right, I understand the environment that he came out of. But what I'm also struck by is that, this is 2026, and this whole notion of kitchens being too toxic and being too difficult and, trying to do things in a different way. I mean, Renee is about my age. I'm 56, and so we're not too far off. But this is something that in my mind has been, going on since at least 2010. Like since the late aughts, for sure, that we need to create a better environment in our kitchens and not be so abusive. So the thought that, and this has been part of the culinary conversation for many, many years now. And so the thought that in 2026, only now he's having this reckoning, I'm like, how did you miss this for the last 15 years? And you're one of the greatest chefs of the world. How did you miss it? I mean, maybe it's because he's one of the greatest chefs in the world. He doesn't have to conform to that. He can do whatever he wants because everyone will work for him for free. I don't know. But those are some of the things that I was just thinking about recently that are kind of along the lines that we're talking about here. Power Plant says the Tower Cafe looks like a giant buzzball. I don't even know what a buzzball is. For cold brew, I need that Neanderthal full blast fudgy chocolate, and that's cool. That's cool. It's all good, man. Again, it's always. I think that this will, this. I'm not advocating for you to buy this. This is completely ridiculous for the home user. Like I never would advocate for any of you, to buy this, right? But I thought it'd be for our first cold brew episode, we would like explore this because I think it's just an interesting and curious way to brew. But again, I do think that that choco fudgy taste that you enjoy really depends upon your selection. Like we're not getting a lot of that choco fudgy taste because of the coffee, because of the selection of the coffee. This Costa Rican natural process has a lot of that strawberry, has some dark chocolate notes, has cherry, but it's not going to give you the flavor that you seek, the experience that you seek. And that's why I talked about the important part of all of this is to think about your sourcing. Like, what is the coffee that you enjoy that's going to give you the results that you want? Like, this without a doubt is a very celebrated coffee. Very well selected, very well processed. Like, I can tell this is really high quality coffee from a high quality roaster, roasted really, really well. So by all marks, this is a great coffee. The truth is that what does any of that matter if you don't enjoy it, right? If you find it, like you want this idea of like your cold brew glory is, I want chocolate, I want fudge, I just want to be ensconced in that and just be like, ah, right? That's what you want. If you get this and you want that, you're unhappy. Like you're just like, God, this is not good. This is not, I don't like this. And that's totally on the money, right? Which is why it's like when you go to like coffee shops, like you came to Spro in the past, that's why we had these menus that included descriptions of coffees so that if you were looking for a particular experience, or more importantly, if you were trying to avoid other experiences, this would be helpful to guide you to that choice that would best fulfill your desires, right? So consider what you're buying. Like I can tell you all of this. What the takeaway might be that you can get a deeper, richer, more complex brew out of the Tower than the full immersion. But it's not going to change the type of coffee that's being used. You still have to find the one that you like, right? And then again, even within the one, let's say you decide to buy this for whatever reason. Everything affects it, right? The selection of the coffee, the roast of the coffee, the grind of the coffee that you use, the size, particularly the grind, the flow rate, the quality of the water, all of that goes into effect. The ratio of water to coffee is going to play all a role. And then how fast you're actually brewing it all plays a role in the way that it impacts the coffee itself. So many complexities can come into play. We try to break it down so that it's simple, right? And easy to approach. But really, if you get into the weeds, you can get into the weeds and get really down and dirty and be lying on the floor paralyzed because you can't figure out how to do it right. Not that I've ever done that. Power Plant says, so good over Haagen-Dazs matcha. Oh, that's okay. That sounds freaky to me, but right on, brother, right on. I'm just not a big fan of matcha. Man, I'm looking out the window and the raindrops are huge. Like I can see the rain, like they're big. I thought they were snowflakes, but I got big raindrops falling. That is, and I mean, I'm like 20 feet from the window. It's pretty crazy out there. Like in Hawaii, evidently today they're supposed to have 30 inches of rain. I was like, 30 inches? How do you even deal with 30 inches? Yeah, I'm just not. I eat matcha ice creams. I've seeked out matcha ice cream. Like when I was in Tokyo one year, I was like trying all the matcha ice cream joints. And I was going for like this super deep matcha like ice cream, like the ones that are like double extra matcha. Like give me that. And then I went to Ippudo in Ginza, and I was like, give me the thick like matcha because I wanted to explore the matcha. But you know what? I prefer sweeter things. That's all. I'm just not a bitter guy. Like I don't like bitter melon. So I don't know. I don't know. But I hear you, man. I hear you. Right on. Haagen-Dazs is all good. Anton says, I forgot who, but someone recently uploaded a video with microscopic images of coffee grounds from different burrs, and the differences on microscopic levels are quite baffling. Oh, that's be interesting to check out. Proplan says it's called experimenter bias. Yes, bias and fallacy should be studied by, and that's why, like, you know, like we do this live stream, but I also do that one on Thursday night, the one I'm doing tonight about cigars, and I hope that I try to be very upfront with my personal biases, right? What I like, what I don't like, because that's always, I try to be cognizant of what is affecting the way that I perceive the experience, right? Because the way that you perceive is going to be necessarily different. And so I think it's important to see where we align and where we diverge, so that you can take what ridiculousness I have to say with better information. So for example, I'm not a big fan of bitters. I don't like bitter melon. I found that I'm not a great fan of what's that fruit? Not jackfruit. Durian. I'm not a big fan of durian. I am not a huge fan of matcha. Like I'll drink it, but you know, if I have something else, I'll drink something else. So these are things that, you know, as we talk and discuss things, to bear in mind that, okay, so if he doesn't like this, then I like that, then therefore we diverge, and somewhere there's commonality, right? Power Plant says the Noma stuff was an open secret, and the interns have been posting stuff about his abuse for the last 10 years. That's a shame. You know, it's a shame that, like, and Dave Chang did the same thing. Yeah. I have I agree with you, man. I totally agree with you on that. Because, you know, and I do agree that abuse begets more, because in our kitchens, you know, I can't say that I have always been like, I've always been a paragon of like virtue in the kitchens. I have had my moments of tantrums and anger management issues, but I've always tried to be cognizant of that, and try to, you know, leave our way behind. Like I come from a production background, right? And motion picture production, especially in the 90s, was a very much like a brigade style kitchen, where it's all just like brutally harsh, like reality, right? Like, F you, get it done, who gives a damn, right? All that kind of stuff. And so, like, you know, suck it up, that whole generational kind of stuff. And so, like, coming out of that, and Hollywood's a very abusive place. Like you say with Rene Redzepi, this whole thing with, like, when Harvey Weinstein came up. Yeah, we all knew about it. I mean, you joke about it, you have to whore yourself out to Hollywood, you know, to get jobs. So that's not unusual. But like, when I came out of that business, one of the things that I wanted to consciously do was, I don't want to bring that kind of environment. I want to bring that kind of vibe, you know, because I wanted to get out of the business, because I was like, getting abused sucks, right? Exploitation abuse just is like a horrible way to make a living. So, you know, I tried, but I can't say that I was always 100% successful in avoiding those kind of traps. I can think of a couple of times when I totally flew off the handle. But I do think that, you know, but like I said, I'm just that it took, you know, this hasn't been on his radar. Redzepi hasn't been on his radar sooner, like 15 years ago. It should have been 15 years ago. Like I was thinking about this, you know, back in the 2000s. So when I started, you know, by the time we started Spro, I'd already been thinking about it for a while. Like, we need to create a better environment, a more cooperative environment. And yeah, Dave Chang. Yeah. Russell says, no one has a mobile kitchen in LA now. Ooh, reservations at $1,800 a pop. Wow. $1,800. I had a meal for 3 at per se for that much, for less than that. God, 1,800. That's craziness. Ken says, my sister used to work at the 3 Michelin star restaurants Maimo in Oslo. Oh, wow. She said they had a very good working environment there. Never saw or heard, there, and that's the nice thing. There are kitchens in these modern times. I mean, over the last, 15, 20 years where the kitchens, the chefs, even though they came out of those type of environments, they were conscious enough to like not repeat that. And I have tremendous respect for that, tremendous respect for that kind of thing. It's like, I mean, Thomas Keller even said that himself. I think he's one of them. And he was a chef that actually had some of those, tantrum predilections from from earlier in his career, because Keller's a lot older than I am, but he's been but his kitchens, and when I've toured his kitchen, was very, very nice. Like I was like, oh, this place is. Actually, I really liked his style. Like I took a lot of, I bit a lot of style off of him. I was like, man, it's all quiet in here. I like the quiet environment. Like, a lot of people like to work in music. I don't like all that. Like, just give me silence and like, let us focus on the work at hand and let us focus on making something really lovely. Power Plant says, that's crazy. 1,800 is a disrespectful number in this economy. Well, no doubt, man, no doubt. But, some people are willing to pay that kind of money. Russell, that's for one person, 1,800, or was that for a whole table? Because, man, that is a lot of... That is a lot. I think Keller was more of a screamer in his older days, not in his later. I would say because I visited French Laundry in 2005, and I didn't know. I know he did have that look like, what the hell are you doing in my kitchen? But I mean, I think definitely in his earlier years, his Raquel years, and those times is definitely part of that whole world of and probably the early years of French Laundry. But I think once he really started to figure it out, I think he became much more calm. Powerplant says, I like bitter greens. I like bitter greens as well, but only in typically in the context of frisée salad. God, I haven't had that in a long time. Actually, there's a little ramen joint here that people like to malign for whatever reason, called Edgy Ramen here in Baltimore. EJJI, Edgy Ramen, and like all American ramen joints, tonkotsu ramen broth. Everybody and their mother does it here. It's god awful. Ramen in America is god awful, generally speaking. And it's worse for me because I learned ramen through Edo style ramen, which is like the chicken broth based, which is clear and anyway. But this place, Edgy, they do tonkotsu style ramen, and the interesting twist that I thought was really good, like other people I know hate it. They're like, I don't like that. They actually put a little bit of bitter greens on the top instead of the radish. The candy, the preserved, the pickled radish, they put some bitter greens. And man, I really liked the way that it played with the flavor. I was like, this is really good. This is a great idea. So Powerplant says, endive mustard greens are nice. Oh yeah, those are nice. Those are nice. West Coast actually has a good, I haven't, I will cop to that because I have not toured a lot of ramen shops when I'm in the West Coast. When I go to the West Coast, when I go to LA, where do I like to eat? I will go to eat I will try to make it to the Gardena Bowling Alley for their coffee shop. They sell, Russell, if you're here, man, the Gardena Bowl coffee shop, I think, has the best Portuguese sausage anywhere. Beats Hawaii. I think it's better than in Hawaii. So I'll go there. I will sometimes go to Ohana Hawaiian Barbecue. There's a theme here. And then lately we've been going to, we found these places. My friend introduced me to these places Um, there's a smash burger joint. Nah, I can't remember the name of it, but it's owned by the same company that does sushi. Sugarfish is the sushi joint. Sugarfish has really nice quality sushi at a very affordable price. I mean, I forgot exactly the. It's not like it's not sushi zanmai kind of like cheap, but it's like America sushi kind of like whoa, that's kind of a good deal. Like you get all this nigiri sushi for like $40. I think it was like really a nice spread, and then they have a burger joint that's their sister restaurant. That's actually really tasty. Hilo Burger or Hilo Burger is what it's called. I like those places. If I feel very nostalgic, I will go to Tommy Burger on Rampart and Beverly, but only at night because that's when it's like really kind of crazy and dangerous. Well, it's never dangerous, but you know, it's crazy there because, and if you really want to take a really interesting taste of LA, I think that's a great place to go. Like if you go to the Tommy Burger, there's a lot of Tommy Burgers, but the Tommy Burger on Beverly and Rampart, like it's a pretty rough area historically. But it's at the corner, and they've got security guards, armed security guards there. But if you go there like on a Friday or Saturday night, like 11:30 or something like that, it is like a microcosm of the entire LA area. Like you see gangbangers there, you know, guys that are Bloods and Crips. You got like Beverly Hills kind of people there. Like everybody's there eating these sloppy chili burgers. It's really kind of, you know, the burgers are good, but man, it's really just an interesting slice of life. Anton says, we had a ramen at our cafeteria recently. I would not dare serve that to someone. The noodles are very stiff and it was impossible to eat without the noodles flinging. Oh, wow. That's a bit crazy. Fried noodles without any softening. Well, it's all right. It's all right. You guys got other stuff out there. Like, I don't remember what I had when I was in Norway, but it was good. I got something this after I went to go visit with Tim. I was walking back to the train because I only flew in to see Tim. So I flew in from Copenhagen, went to go see Tim, and then I was flying back. But I stopped at this restaurant and just had, I forgot the name of the restaurant, but it was really, you know, quite good. I was like, oh, there's good food here. All right, there it is. Our coffees, one coffee, Costa Rican natural, produced 3 ways: hot brew left overnight to be cold, with turned out to be a bit cloudy. That just doesn't look appetizing when it gets cloudy like that, right? This is where you might want to add milk just to make it look better. Then we have our immersion brew that we filtered. That turned out to be pretty good, right? I think it's got nice flavor. You know, I do wish it had more body, more oomph, more like give. And then we have our tower brew after we homogenized it, which is evidently the most important part of it. Oh, yes, so much more. So much more. Better complexity, better depth, more body. Yeah. Fukuoka has some of the best ramen in Japan. I need to go down there. Noe, I'm glad you came. Thank you. I'm glad all of you are here today. Of course, they are the home of tonkotsu ramen. You know, I don't mind tonkotsu ramen. I would just like to try really good tonkotsu ramen. Like the ramen that I had a ramen at, what's that place in Tokyo? There's a place in Tokyo. I sought out. Only men go there. Like there's no women that go to this place because I think women realize that only men are dumb enough to go to places like this. But it's that one place. Is it called Ippudo? Is that right? Tokyo. Let me see. It's somewhere close to, I think it's close to Tokyo Tower. It's in a wedge-shaped building at a wedge-shaped intersection. Of course, I can never find it if I look. Anyway, I think it's called. But anyway, that's not important. But they give you this huge bowl. And I mean, it's huge. It's ridiculous. Like this huge bowl. And they put like this tonkotsu broth with the pork bits. And then they take, there's another vat of like boiling pork. and pork fat, and they ladle some of the fat into the ramen, and then they put the bean sprouts, like the I guess they're steamed bean sprouts. And I don't mean like, they put bean sprouts on a lot of ramen, but I mean they put like a dinner salad's worth of beans. Like I was getting full just eating the sprouts. And there's a and I mean there's a Mount Fuji of sprouts on top of your ramen that you have to dig through. And then you eat this whole, man, women don't go here because they're just smart. Like guys are just dumb. We're just dumb. Jiro K. Okay, that is the one. You're right. Ramen Jiro. We talked about it for beans. Yeah, it was just. That's crazy. That was crazy. It was good. I liked it. The flavor of the broth was good. But we don't get things like that here. Like we get overblown. Like I remember the one time I was in Portland, Oregon. One of my good friends, Dwayne Sorensen, the guy that started Stumptown. He was like, dude, you need to go to this ramen joint. It's awesome. It's the best ramen in town. All right, I'm gonna go check it out. So I tried it out. And the tonkotsu ramen, of course. God, always tonkotsu ramen here. It was all rich and thick and heavy, which was actually pretty good. Like so all this oomph. A little teeny tiny noodle. What is this? What is this vermicelli noodle doing in my ramen? Like what the? And then their chasyu was like this huge slabs. I'm like, what the? It's like, where's the balance, bro? What's with this hipster food? I want hipster food. I want balance. Anyway, I know we talked about this before. In ramen, lard is called seabura, which means back fat. Ooh, that sounds like they are like soft clay. It is good. But the health side of like my American thinking is like, oh, you're putting fat, that's just going to kill my arteries. This is the problem that we live with as Americans. We're just like programmed in a certain way that's just not productive. All right. Well, that's good. Good to see all of you. Thank you for back again tomorrow with more of the coffee Q&A. So hope you have a wonderful day. And see you next time. Thanks, Mom.